Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today, we're getting to our wide receiver start sit. We're going to go through every single game for the Week 9 NFL slate, help you set your lineups for this week in fantasy football. If you guys have specific questions about your players, who you should start, who you should sit, definitely drop those down below in the comments. Happy to answer as many as I can as we get into this week. If you guys enjoyed today's video, get some value out of it as well, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. If you're new, we'd really appreciate it. Awesome to grow our community here, so would love to hear from you in the comments. Let's get into these matchups. First up, we head to Germany in the morning, 9:30 a.m. Look, it's always a tough, I shouldn't say a tough Sunday, a bit of a grind of a Sunday when you get a morning game, watching football from 9:30 a.m. till, for East Coast people, I guess I should say, till after 11 p.m. at night on Sunday. But we got some great games in each of these slots to definitely keep us heavily involved here. The Dolphins and the Chiefs being that starting point. Look, the Chiefs have been very, very good defensively so far this season. 7th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, 2nd in EPA against the pass. They've been a fair bit weaker against the run. But again, a lot of these numbers, it's hard to go against what the Dolphins are doing offensively. It's tough for anybody to truly be able to completely limit this offense. So as good as the Chiefs have been, doesn't give me much pause with what I want to do with these receivers. On the Dolphins side, defensively, I think this is their bigger strength, the pass game as opposed to the run. 17th in fantasy points allowed, but they are top 11 in EPA, and you're seeing the green here for the pass rush grade and coverage grade, so both of those are in the top 10. This has been a pretty solid unit that now gets Jalen Ramsey back that I do think in the second half of the season will be even better than what they've been so far this year. With that being the case on the Dolphins side of the ball, or defensive side of the ball, I do still want to play Rashee Rice, seeing the routes run ticking up. His target share has still been pretty solid. We're seeing Sky Moore take a backseat as well. We're seeing Marquez Valdes-Scantling continue to be in that role where he's on the field, not seeing a bunch of targets. In this game, I do think the Chiefs are going to lean on the arm of Mahomes, and Rice and Kelsey are those guys that I want to be playing. The rest here are definitely more shots in the dark and long shot plays with really, really low floors. I'm feeling confident in Rice moving forward this season. Very excited about what he can do. On the Dolphins side of things offensively, this is Jalen Waddle. This is Tyreek Hill. There isn't too much more to talk about. These are guys I do want to start in this game. Rams at the Packers. We've got a Rams team that's likely to be without Matthew Stafford. I don't think he will be available, so that means Brett Rippon starting at quarterback, and that puts a huge wrinkle into this team on the road as well in Green Bay. This is a Green Bay defense that is very solid against the pass, top 10 in EPA against the pass on the season. Trading Rasul Douglas will probably have an impact on the secondary, so it doesn't make this a completely tantalizing matchup, but really it comes down to who's starting at quarterback. On the Rams side, been pretty solid defensively against the pass. 8th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position, but the coverage grade from PFF, they just do not love this team very much. This isn't a fantastic pass defense, but they've done a good job so far this year, and will definitely need to lean on the defense if they're not going to have Stafford in this game. Now, with the Packers, obviously we have a pretty crowded room here of players whose roles are kind of all over the place. Any given guy can kind of dominate the target share, dominate the opportunities. Last week we saw it being Jaden Reed. We saw Romeo Doubs find the end zone on a pass that was intended for Reed. And then we've seen Christian Watson take a major backseat. In this particular game, I would want to sit the majority of these guys, but the only guy I would take the flyer on is Watson, because Watson is seeing targets that are coming more downfield, opportunity for more explosive plays, and I do think he has the best chance to break out amongst these wide receivers. But the rest of them, to me, have pretty low floors, pretty low ceilings, I should say, not low floors. Doubs is a guy who can get you a decent floor, but ceiling-wise, Watson is the best guy for it. And if I'm going to start any of these guys, I want to play off of a ceiling because, again, there just isn't a lot here with this offense as it currently stands. For the Rams, I do have Puka Nacua listed as a sit this week. Same goes for Tutu Atwell. Again, this is the expectation that we are not going to be seeing Matthew Stafford at quarterback. Cooper Kupp being the veteran here, the guy in the slot for this offense. He's the type of player I could see Rippon leaning on in these shorter areas of the field type of passes and plays. Again, this Packers defense, Jair Alexander being on the outside. Nacua is probably going to see a lot of coverage for him, so I do not want to be playing him. Commanders at the Patriots. The Commanders looking like a much different defense heading into this week with losing Sweat and Young. You know, this pass rush takes a major step back with these two guys gone, and I think that will have an impact in this game. The Patriots should be able to have some cleaner pockets for Mac Jones. The pass protection, the protection in general has been a problem so far this season. Definitely relieving some stress there, and this is a Commanders team that has struggled against wide receivers. 31st in fantasy points allowed. That is second last in the league. 26th in EPA against the pass. So this is a good spot for the Pats, who are definitely banged up at the receiver spot, but still the guys out there should have an opportunity. As for the Commanders, the Pats are not a underwhelming defense here with the losses they've incurred in their secondary throughout the season, but they are starting to turn things around. This isn't a super exciting matchup. Again, the numbers here tell me that this is a bottom 10 unit in most categories, but coached by Bill Belichick, I have some confidence in what they're able to do and turn this thing around. Where do the Commanders go offensively here? Their team really relies on the pass. I think they're throwing the ball the most per game in the league, so Howell's arm is a big factor, but again, the ball's being spread out with these other options too much to really rely on a lot of them. That leaves me with the Commanders to be Terry McLaurin being someone I do want to start with the volume in which Sam Howell is pushing the ball downfield. He's throwing the ball 20, or his pass attempts of 20 plus air yards, I think is only trailing Derek Carr. Might even be ahead. No, yeah, it's trailing Derek Carr because Carr is way ahead of the rest of the league. So like McLaurin there as that downfield target. The rest of these guys, I don't know if we will see Curtis Samuel in this game. That's going to give Jahan Dotson an upgraded opportunity. Logan Thomas is still involved at the tight end spot for this team, so I don't feel super confident again because of this Patriots matchup. As for the Pats, Demario Douglas, I feel really excited about in this game. He hasn't been on the field a ton quite yet this year. He's now going to get his opportunity. Don't think we see Devontae Parker. We won't be seeing Kendrick Bourne again this season. Juju Smith-Schuster and Jalen Reagor being the competition. I like what Douglas's opportunity is because this team has really loved him ever since training camp as a 6th-round pick. This is a guy getting on the field more. When he's on the field, he's been targeted at a 25% rate, so feeling pretty good about him going into this week. Buccaneers at the Texans. Both these teams the Texans coming off a loss last week to the Panthers in need of a bounce back. We've got a Bucs defense that's pretty easy to figure out. They're very good against the run. They have been all season long. Going to get Vita Vea back. It looks like he's been practicing in full. The pass defense is where there's a problem. 28th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Don't generate much of a pass rush. That's really going to help CJ Stroud here. So these wide receivers have a great opportunity to get rolling and coming off of a really down week in the passing game for this team. As for the Texans defense, year in and year out, the last couple of years, they've been very good in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. I don't really have much of a real explanation for it. Their pass rush has taken a step back. Their EPA against the pass is 27th. Their coverage grade has been good. They're definitely respected by PFF. I don't think they're as good or as talented as what the number indicates in fantasy points allowed. So it's hard to really respect them as a pass defense, but it has been the case so far this year. And now with that being the case, I am going to lean more towards sitting Mike Evans. That early start with Baker Mayfield hasn't continued. He is a player that's more of a downfield target, a guy to get the ball to on the outside for explosive plays. He's going to have his touchdown opportunities. He scored last week, but Godwin is definitely the more reliable guy for this offense. And the Texans, again, they just had answers for the wide receiver position. So I'm going to be respecting that a little bit here for a Bucs offense that has stalled a little bit. So I do like Godwin, not so much Evans in this one. On the Texans side, Tank Dell gets back. Robert Woods missing time. That's definitely helpful because if Woods is available, I would have some serious concerns with Tank moving forward because Noah Brown is back. And early in the season, Brown was on the field and Dell wasn't. And now Brown is back and Brown's running a good amount of routes and competing with Dell for opportunities. But I still think Dell is the premier guy of the two, talent-wise. So I do feel comfortable going to both of them. I think Collins is in for a big bounce-back week, but I think Dell is a good option too because, again, the Bucs have seen teams throw the ball quite a bit against them. That's not going to change with this Texans team. They can't run the football, so they'll be passing it a ton. That should give Dell enough opportunity to produce. Cardinals at the Browns. We've got a Cardinals team that's going to be going to, I believe, Clayton Tune for this one, so that has a pretty big impact on what they're going to do offensively. This is a Browns team that's been very good against the pass, 6th in fantasy points allowed, 3rd in EPA against the pass, an amazing pass rush. That's going to be very difficult for a Clayton Tune debut. So keep an eye on things there. I do expect this to be Tune, but again, when I look at this Browns defense, one thing that you really need to pay attention to is how receivers perform against man coverage because this is a team playing in man coverage at one of the highest rates in the entire league. So if you got someone that's good against man, you do want to still play them against this Browns defense as good as they've been this season in fantasy points allowed. As for the Cardinals, a team that's really not much to worry about when it comes to both pass defense and run defense. Pass defense has been a struggle, 30th in EPA against the pass. The Browns are getting Deshaun Watson back, so that will play a factor as well. And as we talked about with the man coverage, Marquise Brown has been very good against man coverage so far this season. He is 4th in yards per route run against man coverage so far this year. He's been an elite guy even dating back to seasons prior, so I'm going to trust him in this matchup. It looks like we're not going to get Michael Wilson either, which will have an impact on the target share. I think Rondale Moore and Zach Pascal are definitely not guys I'd want to start against this. Again, very good pass defense. Deshaun Watson is back. It's Tough to get a full read on this team with Watson because obviously nursing this shoulder injury, like how close is he to 100%? He's definitely not 100%. Cooper as that top option, I still look to play him, but Moore is someone they're going to look to get the ball to in some creative ways, but I don't think he's going to give me enough opportunity to make it worthwhile to play him. The trading of Donovan Peoples-Jones might have an impact on that moving forward, but this is what we'll roll with heading into this week. Bears at the Saints. Got a Bears team that adds Montez Sweat to hopefully help them with the pass rush that's been, honestly, in my opinion, I think maybe the grade indicates it as well, the worst in the league. Like they do not have talent on the edges to generate pressure. Sorely need a guy like Sweat to help them do that. Is that an immediate impact here against the Saints? We shall see. But the Bears have been very good against the run. They got a good group of linebackers. They've been a team that has definitely made it the teams that if they're going to be building leads will need to throw the football. So look for that. I'm looking at that for the Saints, at least in the early onset. Being at home, they're a big favorite, over 8 points in this game. So maybe they're still going to include the run game a decent amount because they might be leading here. But again, this is the way to attack the Bears, I think, from a fantasy perspective, is more looking at the wide receivers than you do the running backs. Because again, fantasy-wise, 18th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, so more middle of the road. On the Saints side of things, it's tough to want to play many assets against them. The slot is where they've really struggled. The Bears don't really have a fantasy relevant player that runs their routes from the slot. Moore is running his routes outside. Top 5 in EPA against the pass, a really good coverage grade. The numbers on the fantasy points allowed don't have them quite top 10 yet, but I have a feeling they will be very soon. So definitely a difficult matchup here for Tyson Bagent in this passing game. And with that being the case, I am going to be sitting DJ Moore in this one. We started him last week against the Chargers. The week prior, he was a sit for me. Didn't have a big week. This week, I would definitely look to sit him once again. Again, this is an offense that just, even in a clear plus opportunity against the Chargers last week, still didn't generate a whole hell of a lot. Now I think the Saints, obviously, pass defense is much, much better. So I'm going to be leaning away from playing Moore here. On the Saints side, I like pretty much all of their options. I think this is, from some people, you probably get a different opinion than you will me. Rashid Shaheed is just a player I'm really struggling to ever want to play because the target share just isn't good enough, and he's just really risky. If you are in a matchup where you think you're the major underdog and you have Shaheed, or you have a guy like, I don't know, who would give me him, like maybe Amari Cooper, let's say. I don't think that Cooper, even if it is the Cardinals, I don't think his ceiling is crazy high, but I know Shaheed's could be crazy high. So maybe you want to start him there, but just too risky for me and my appetite. Olave and Thomas, those are two guys I would feel comfortable starting. Again, I think the Bears are a team attacking the pass game and can find success there. Those are two guys I feel more comfortable with because of their volume of opportunity. One of the biggest games you have in the 1 p.m. slate, Seahawks at the Ravens. I think these are two teams that have been very good against the run so far this season, especially the Seahawks. I think not a lot of people have paid attention to how good the Seahawks have been against the run. Do need to move the ball through the air more. That's why they've struggled. 25th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, but they're still considered a pretty good group in top 10 EPA. Good pass rush grade as well. So I'm looking for the Ravens to throw the ball a hell of a lot more than they have on average this season. So that's something to look at. And then on the Ravens side of things, defensively, they've been good across the board, both against the run, the pass. Top 3 in fantasy points, the number 1 team at EPA against the pass. Definitely a really good unit so far this season. But again, with the Seahawks, I think you're going to see a good mix of the run and the pass. We're looking at an opportunity here for DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, where it's just there's 3 really good talents, and it's hard to figure out who's going to be that top option on that given week. Now for DK, he's definitely separated as the number 1 in terms of the depth chart, and the targets last week definitely indicated that. But this is, again, a tough matchup where it makes these guys feel like the floor is really low. Now, even with that being the case, I do want to go to DK in this game coming off of a major amount of targets. Still think he's the top option here. The Ravens like to play a little bit of man coverage above the league average, and DK can definitely get his opportunities there. When both Metcalf and Lockett are on the field, like I don't want to play JSN right now. I just don't think the targets that he's getting when those two are available are valuable enough. Obviously had a touchdown last week, but only had about 30 receiving yards, so I'm not feeling confident in playing him quite yet. On the Ravens side, love Zay Flowers in this matchup. Like I said, I think they're going to need to throw the football a little bit more. I'm almost there with playing Odell Beckham. Rashad Bateman's been a little bit more involved, though, and they're still getting the ball to Nelson Aguilar, and you can't forget about Mark Andrews being that kind of number 1 for this team, but not at the wide receiver spot. So I could see a reason to play Odell here, but there just hasn't quite been enough, even though this is a matchup where I do see them throwing the football a bunch. Now, we got a really interesting game here between the Vikings and the Falcons when it comes to the wide receiver position. We got the Falcons starting Taylor Heineke, the Vikings going to Jaren Hall. The Vikings have struggled throughout the season when it comes to fantasy points allowed to wide receivers and struggled defending the pass all year long. They're really reliant on blitzing, trying to generate pressure with that blitz because they don't have much of a pass rush. Taylor Heineke has actually been really good against the blitz in his career. Last season was basically a top 5 quarterback against the blitz and could, if he gets the blitz quite a bit, which he will, this is the highest blitz rate in the league at over 50%, could find some success in the passing game. But will he have Drake London, who hasn't been practicing this week? I'm not so sure. As for the Vikings with Jaren Hall at quarterback, the Falcons are a really good run defense. They're still a pretty solid pass defense as well. I think this is a tough first start for them on the road in Atlanta. But if there was any spot where this team could find success, it might be the pass game because, again, the Vikings just can't run the football, but I'm not sure that really matters because I am going to be sitting Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, Brandon Powell. I can't trust these guys with Hall at quarterback. Hall's impact on the game last week was very minimal. They already had the game in control. But his average depth of target was like a couple of yards, 3 yards. I don't want to ask Jordan Addison to be a yards after the catch monster for me. I think this game is going to be really low scoring. I think the Vikings are going to struggle to put up many points at all. I think the Falcons will take care of business in this game. But Drake London looking like he won't play. If he does play, I will start him. But as far as the receivers go in this offense, this moves to like Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith as opposed to Van Jefferson or a Mac Hollins or whoever it might be at the receiver spot finding an edge. None of these guys will really give me that, I think, or worth the risk in this one. Colts at the Panthers. The Panthers looking to get back-to-back wins. They're a very short underdog in this one with the Colts coming to town. The Panthers are a little bit banged up from what I've seen. Adam Thielen and DJ Chark have been missing practice. Terrace Marshall's been dealing with a back injury and has been limited in his snaps. So we've got Jonathan Mingo, Hayden Hurst as kind of potential upgraded opportunities. But this Panthers opportunity is definitely a pretty decent one for the pass game. Like, I don't think the Colts are an overwhelming pass rush, 21st in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So there is an opportunity for someone to produce here if these guys do miss time. As for the Colts with Gardner Minshew, we are seeing this Panthers team be a little bit better lately against the pass. 11th in fantasy points allowed, 18th in EPA against the pass. A lot of teams want to run the hell out of the football against this team, and I that's no surprise. They've been so bad. When you got Jonathan Taylor, when you got Zach Moss, I expect them to do that. So even with the big weeks from Josh Downs we've seen the last two, I am going to lean towards sitting him. I just think the pass volume will be down a little bit in this one. Pittman still being that red zone option, that scoring option, a little bit more targeted. In a game here where I think scoring opportunities will be there for the Colts, I do want to start him. And then for the Panthers, I don't think Adam Thielen's going to play with this hamstring injury. I don't know if DJ Chark will play either. So if these two guys miss, Mingo is going to be a decent start for you. He will definitely be the one getting the majority of targets in this game. He can definitely elevate your floor because, again, this Panthers team has thrown so much. They're throwing the ball at one of the highest rates in the entire league. Mingo can take advantage of that opportunity, and he could be a guy you pick up on Sunday and play if there's any new injury news as well. Giants at the Raiders. Yeah, this game should be a lot of fun, right? Daniel Jones, Aiden O'Connell, two dumpster fire teams going at it. I don't think this game will be on a TV at 4 p.m. But we've got a Raiders team that has been pretty good fantasy points wise. I think it's just more they've been getting killed in the run game, and teams haven't really needed to move the ball much through the air. You look at the game against the Lions; they didn't do much from a fantasy points perspective, or from a scoring perspective in the pass game. They got a lot of their points through the ground and through Jahmyr Gibbs. So it's improved here for the Raiders. I don't think they're a team to be worried about defensively whatsoever. But we have a Giants team, heavy blitz. So we'll see Aiden O'Connell's test here of how he can perform against it. And the Giants overall this season have been pretty poor defensively, both against the run and the pass. So it's nothing to be to see too much that sticks out here in particular. So what do I want to do with the Raiders? I am going to be starting Devontae Adams. I had a couple people asking me, like, what do I do with this guy? Do I bench him? I'm not benching this guy as a number one option, a guy who receives a significant amount of targets. A game here where we're going to see O'Connell blitz quite a bit. I think Devontae Adams will be that safety valve first option for him. I'm going to lean on him as that super talented player with the new quarterback to be leaned on pretty heavily. Jacoby Myers is where I have a little bit more of a concern. Then on the Giants side, look, I'm not starting anybody. I know Daniel Jones is back. I think Saquon will continue to be fed here. Volume won't be good enough. None of these guys stick out enough. This is a team just not creating enough yards after the catch. I just cannot trust anybody right now. One of the best games of the weekend, Cowboys at the Eagles, a huge battle in the NFC East. Super excited for this game. I'm really excited to see how the Cowboys defense matches up here. I think the Cowboys being a little bit overlooked, everyone kind of seeing the Eagles hit their stride. I think there's a good chance for the Cowboys to potentially pull out the win here, but passing game will be a huge focal point for them. Dak Prescott moving the ball through the air to all three of these wide receivers and Jake Ferguson. The run game is going to struggle. The Eagles are dead last in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Very clear we're going to see that great volume, so very excited for that. And then on the other side, with the Eagles offense, the Cowboys, of course, been very good defensively, kind of across the board. Top 4 in fantasy points allowed, top 4 in EPA against the pass, a great pass rush. This game, I think when I see the Eagles in neutral game scripts, they like to throw the ball quite a bit, and Hurts is not using his legs too much anymore. I think it's because of being banged up and being a little bit hurt. So you're going to see a lot of plays in the pocket from Hurts. I think the passing volume from both of these teams is going to be really high. I think we'll also see a lot of points in this game because of it. So across the board, there's a lot to be excited about fantasy-wise. And that's why I've got the Cowboys. All three of the wide receivers are guys I do want to start. The Eagles are giving up almost 40 pass attempts per game because of how good they've been against the run. These guys are going to be great starts for you, I think. Gallup's been getting a lot of targets, hasn't really quite produced yet. Cooks is someone we've seen score a couple touchdowns. I think both of these guys will get enough volume here, and Lamb has crushed man coverage, and the Eagles are playing a ton of man this year. He's like third, I believe, in yards per route run, just crushing it. Same goes for A.J. Brown, actually, too, and the Cowboys like to play a lot of man, so expect all those guys to contribute. Devontae Smith is still someone I want to start, and then the third wide receiver spot for the Eagles is just an afterthought. Sunday Night Football, Bills at the Bengals. Very excited for this one in Cincinnati. We saw the Bengals hit their stride last week against the 49ers, really find themselves offensively. Looks like Joe Burrow has gotten healthy, and that's a huge factor, I think, as to why this team was struggling early in the season. Now they get this Bills team that's really banged up on the defense, which would definitely be helpful for them. But the Bills have been a pretty solid unit, 7th in EPA against the pass, 12th in fantasy points allowed, a good coverage grade. Pass rush has been there pretty decently too. The Bengals, not a ton of talent, I think, in their secondary, but just a super well-coached team, and Lou Anarumo has given Josh Allen a ton of trouble in his career, so look out for that. Now, with the starts and the sits between these two teams, I'm going to feel pretty confident in playing the top two for both offenses. I know T. Higgins was a sit for us last week, put up like less than 10 fantasy points, so it was a decent sit guy to be sitting, but I am going to go back to him here. The target volume is still at a good rate. I don't think the Bills' pass defense is anywhere near as good as the Niners' pass defense is, so I feel confident in the Bengals to be able to move the football through the air. I don't think the Bills' pass rush is at the same level either. And then on the Bills' side of things, Gabe Davis has been a monster in target. Sorry, I shouldn't say a monster, but has been very good target share-wise. This is one of the better mid-round picks you probably made in your fantasy drafts this year. You're probably very happy. Davis and Diggs are two guys I'm feeling pretty comfortable week in and week out starting. Shakur off the big week, I still would not look to play. I don't think that is sustainable week in and week out. Monday Night Football, Chargers on the road at the Jets. Chargers in for a tough matchup for their passing game, with the Jets being the number one defense in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, and then they're going up one of the worst defenses in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So pretty easy to get a read on this game. The Chargers pass rush has not been good enough, even with Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Tui Tuipulotu has also had a really good year, the rookie out of USC. They need to be better here. They're going to have a great opportunity to be better because this Jets pass protection has been brutal. But again, the struggles against the pass defense are real here. Now, that doesn't mean that anyone but Garrett Wilson is someone I would even consider starting. Both Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb are two guys that I definitely want to sit. There just isn't really... There isn't really sustainable proof that this is an opportunity for either of these guys. On the Chargers side, I'm really worried about Josh Palmer and whether or not he plays. Even if he does, he's definitely someone I want to sit. Keenan Allen's the only guy I can trust in this pass game. So with this tough matchup, no one else really to consider, even if Palmer is out. Okay, that's every single matchup for Week 9 of the fantasy football season. Again, guys, if you have questions, what players to start, which players to sit, drop those in the comments. Would love to hear from you for watching this video. Appreciate you watching the video. If you have enjoyed it, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. If you're new, guys, we're live also on Twitch every Sunday at 11 a.m., previewing the full slate, getting the latest injury updates, and we're also live on the OwnersBox Sports Twitch every single day during the week at noon for Lines at Lunch. So if you guys haven't checked us out there, we have a ton of fun every day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.